Hello. Hello.
Maybe they're still talking outside. I don't know about that.
I actually clap, right? I mean, that's my job.
Could we potentially be able to talk later? Just you mentioned earlier about oxygen. That's not next on the horizon for me, but it is like coming upon me, and
Okay.
something that I've been vaguely thinking about. So.
Yeah. Let's talk over the coffee break.
Okay.
Oh, is this I was like, two trains. Two can trains. I could be like the mascot. It's like a Fruit Loops joke. Right. For sure.
Sam is there. Chicken Sam is not there. I'm sorry. I'm making up for it.
You're really picky about it. Yeah. That's all I can. You get it. Stop it sometimes. That's what my dad calls it. You gonna be Pentagon.
Periodic stuff. Yeah.
I thought there was yeah, forward, or decide to nail it later if you want to wait longer. And or you can turn it in on at the counter at Molly's desk. There's a folder. But if you do it that way, do it like before lunch tomorrow, because I'm just gonna grab it and leave it. But you can give the forms to me at any time while I'm still.
Okay, next up is Diana speaking of periodic paths on the Pentagon.
All right, thank you very much. It's one of the things the organizers invited me. That's exciting. And it's great to be here. So these are some periodic billiard trajectories on the Pentagon. When I say Pentagon, I mean regular Pentagon. Okay. Look how beautiful they are, right? So we're gonna spend the top understanding these. So that's the goal, understand periodic billiard trajectories on the regular Pentagon. And here's the plan. First, I'll explain everything for the square. We're thinking nice and familiar. And then I'll just generalize the same methods to the Pentagon. So that's the plan. So if you're like feeling like it's a bit too easy at the beginning, great. Come along. It's a wonderful, beautiful world. So billiards is a particle bouncing around inside a polygon so that the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. And as humans, we understand periodic billiards on just a few shapes. So the square, the equilateral triangle, the regular hexagon, probably the isosceles right triangle if we cared, and now, thanks to our work, the regular pentagon. So that's why we study the Pentagon, because it's sort of the first non-easy example. It's the first thing that doesn't tile the plane by reflection. So here are some periodic billiard paths in the square, since we're starting in the square. And these are nice. And you might ask yourself, which directions are periodic? So here's the way to think about it. This is the periodic billiard trajectory from the previous slide. But I don't really like this, because this ball goes in 4 different directions. That's just ugly. So when it hits the first side, instead of bouncing across the yellow edge, we'll reflect across it. And then the same with the green edge. Instead of bouncing off the green edge, we'll just create a new copy of the table. And then the same with the red edge. Instead of bouncing off it, we'll just go through it. And so in this way, you can identify a periodic billiard trajectory on the square with a line on a piece of graph paper or a grid. And so the theorem is that a trajectory is periodic when its slope is rational. That's an if and only if. And the way you can think about it is that for rational slopes, like this one here is slope 2, the trajectory eventually hits a corresponding point. So here it goes, there's some corresponding point in yellow, and then boom, there's the same corresponding point again. So if you hit the corresponding point, then you are rational slope, and if you hit the corresponding point, you're periodic, and it's kind of the same. So that's the thing. So periodic directions on the square are like vectors p and q for integers p and q. Great. So here we go, and there it's doing it again, just in case you forgot. Great. So I'm also going to use the technology of translation surfaces. So associated to the square billiard table is the square torus surface. So here, if you have a particle that is going along and it hits here, this right side is identified over to the left, and so it just keeps going. Yeah. So if you have a trajectory with slope p over q on the square torus, the equivalent question to asking how many times all right, what are we asking about? So what I want to know is period. Don't take that the wrong way. How many times does the thing bounce? So here it's not really bouncing, it's just crossing the edges. And the number of times that it crosses the edges here is just p plus q. Maybe you can see that. Because the slope is like rise over run, it rises p times, in this case 3, it runs 5 times for q, and so that's what we get. So the trajectory, and then if you want to make this into a billiard, did you see that? That was a very clever trick that I did to turn that from a torus trajectory into a billiard. I thought of that. So the period of the billiard period of a trajectory with slope p over q is 2 times p plus q, because you get p from the top, p from the bottom, and q from the left and right. So my burning question for this talk, at least the first half, is what is the period of a trajectory in a given periodic direction on the Pentagon? So for the square, we know the periodic directions, rational slopes. If you give me your favorite rational slope, and I want to know the period, I'll just add the numerator denominator, multiply by 2. Boom, done. Question is to answer the same thing for the Pentagon. If you give me your favorite periodic direction, what's the period in that direction? Okay, so I started wanting to answer this question about 2010 when I was a graduate student at Brown. Sergei Tabaknikov was visiting, and he told me this question. So I became obsessed, like you do. So in a square billiard table, a trajectory with rational slope is periodic over here, and then a trajectory with irrational slope is dense. So if you let this go long enough, it just fills in the whole thing. Now, our esteemed morning speaker alleged that periodic things are not interesting. and this is a general thing that people think. People think that somehow ergodic things are more interesting. I've always found that puzzling. So,
Granted, my statement, I made them an extremely constrained context.
I know, you totally did. It was like so precise after we were laughing about it. Okay. So one thing you can say is that regular polygons are really nice. If you shoot your billiard ball on a regular polygon, you know it's going to do one of two things. Either it will be periodic, like the one on the left, or it will be equidistributed, meaning it fills in the whole thing evenly. So there's the examples for the square, and here's some nice examples for the pentagon. Okay, life is good on regular polygons, and that's where we'll stay. So, good. So this is all joint work with Samuel Leliaka, who's a mathematician at University Paris Sud, another queer mathematician. Great. And this is a picture of us sailing in Boston. I believe Penny is wearing the associated shirt today. Is that right? Yeah. That's right. Yep. Okay. That's great. Let's wrap it all coordinated. Okay. So here. Most of you, if not all of you, have taken linear algebra. The shear is the most maligned of the four types of transformations. Everyone sort of skips over the shear, but the shear is my favorite. This is a horizontal shear. It fixes one horizontal line and it sort of, there's this shear thing to the others. So that's what we'll use, the shear. Okay, here's what we're going to do with it. We're going to play with the other half plane, the positive quadrant. So we start with the two standard basis vectors, these black ones, and we use shears to generate all primitive or visible points. So let's pick the horizontal shear, takes the whole first quadrant and takes it to the blue sector. And there's lots of ways to do that. We're going to choose the one that takes these black vectors to the blue vectors. And that is the matrix that does it. And similarly, we pick a vertical shear, one that takes the whole first quadrant to the red sector. Lots of ways to do that. We did it analogously. Okay, so let's do it. So we're going to start with 2 points, 1, 0, and 0, 1. And we're going to apply these shears over and over again. So if you start with the 2 black points and you apply the red shear, you get the green point. If you apply the blue shear, you also get the green point. Okay. Let's do it again. If we apply both of the shears to all the existing points, we get these 2 new points. Let's do it again. If we apply the red transformation to all 5 of the existing points, we get these 2 new points. If we apply the blue one, we get those 2 new points. Okay? And we keep going, we get those 2 new points, those 4 new points from the red, and those 4 new points from the blue, and we can keep going like this. And what it generates is all the visible points. This is a way of generating all the points that, imagine that you had an orchard with trees at every last point, and you were standing at the origin. It generates all the points that you can see. So it gives you this one, 2, 1, but it doesn't give you this one, 4, 2. It's blocked. Okay. And importantly for us, these are our lowest terms periodic directions. So when I said at the beginning, you give me your favorite rational slope, and I take the numerator and denominator and add them together to get the period, well, it's important that that was in lowest terms. So it gives us exactly what we need. Okay, now, let's see. It also gives every visible point a tree location, and this will be coming up importantly later, this tree. So if this was your favorite point, well, there's really only one way to get there. Assuming that we start with this, without loss of generality, we can start everything at this point. To get there, we did the red transformation, then the blue, then the red, then the red, then the blue. And it's hard to say red and blue, so we'll just call them 0 and 1. Okay, so it gives it like a zip code. Great, we'll be using that later. It also puts a tree structure on everything. So if you look at a point, you can see that there's always one thing coming in this case blue, and 2 things coming out. And so it would be a nice tree, but it looks like you need to brush it. It's a little tangled. So I've brushed it for you. So this was our favorite point that we got via 10110. That was the yellow point. And here's the tree structure. And this is a rough measure of how complicated a point is. If you give me a rational number in general, which level of the tree it appears at. It's like how complicated it is. So again, this was a tree structure on our set of lowest terms periodic directions. Good, great. Okay, so here's the question. Here's the thing we're going to use it for. Suppose you just shoot your billiard ball in this direction, 42/5, 6, and you want to know what will its period be? So there's one way to get this in lowest terms, which is you get out your piece of paper and you just put the fraction in lowest terms. But I'm going to suggest a more complicated way that will generalize. So here we go. We say, all right, this is in the blue sector, sector 0, so let's apply the inverse of the blue matrix. Now we're in the red sector, sector 1, so we'll apply the inverse of the red matrix. Still in the red sector, so inverse of the red. Still, now we're in the blue, so inverse of the blue. And now we're on the edge. I didn't tell you, but these sectors are closed at the bottom and open at the top. So on the edge, we're in the red, and it takes us down to the x-axis. Oh, well, I want it to be at 1, 0, but I'm at 6/5, 0. That's too bad. So I'll just multiply everything by 5/6. So I multiply everything by 5/6, including my original vector, and I get, the lattice vector in that direction is 7, 5. So if I want to know what my period is in that direction, I add 7 plus 5, multiply by 2, you get 24. Okay, great. So this is our method. This is, what's it called? What's this method called? Yeah, continued fractions, or, great. What? Yeah. All right, great. Anyway. Whew, I reviewed almost everything. That's okay. Okay, so our square billiard table unfolded to a square torus. You might wonder, what does the Pentagon billiard table unfold to? Well, let's see. So we start a Pentagon here. Again, I colored this before the conference. And basically, we want every side of a color to have a parallel side of the same color. Everything needs to have a friend. So we'll start by reflecting across the green edge. Does anything that have a parallel edge of the same color? No, not yet. Keep going. No. Oh, purple is happy. Okay, so now we identify those two edges, which means that just like on the square torus, if you were walking along and you hit here, you'd reappear over here and keep going. All right, now let's keep going. Those have a buddy, those have a buddy. Okay, and we get this whole surface where parallel edges are identified in this way around the outside, like the purple arrows. I omitted the blue arrows, but the blue edges are identified in the same way, and then in the middle is identified. So this is the surface that the Pentagon billiard table unfolds to. If you want to understand the Pentagon billiard table, but you don't want your trajectory to go in all kinds of different directions, you got to use this. Okay, genus 6 with 5 vertices, for those of you who are topologists. So this is, if you want all the edge identifications, there they are. So we unfolded the billiard table into this surface, but this surface is kind of complicated. So instead of using this big surface, I'm just going to use the double pentagon. So this necklace is a 5-fold cover of a double pentagon. So just 2 pentagons with opposite parallel edges identified. And we can do almost everything that we want to do with just simplified surface of the double pentagon. So that's where we'll live for now. Okay, with it's genus 2, 1 vertex. Oh man, life is good. Now there's a reason why we like the double pentagon, which is because I studied it for my PhD thesis when I was a grad student. And I made this video for the Dance Your PhD competition to explain what is exactly the double pentagon surface. So this is a really great, it's much better than me writing out a definition. This is what I use for my definition. And if you are a graduate student and you write a PhD thesis, I highly recommend that you enter the Dance Your PhD competition, because if your video goes viral, like mine does, really, this was a life-changing video for me. Yeah, for real though. Like the semester that I was applying for jobs, it was going viral. It's pretty good. Okay, so this is a double pentagon surface, and I studied it for my PhD thesis, so it's a natural thing to use. It has a friend named the Golden L. So far, nobody has made a dance video with someone dancing on the Golden L, but it works the same way. If Libby were to dance, that's the dancer Libby. If Libby were to dance here across the green edge, she'd reappear on the edge here. And this is made of two overlapping golden rectangles. So a golden rectangle is a rectangle that has like length phi on this side and length 1 on that side. So here's a golden rectangle, there's a golden rectangle, and when you overlap them, you get baby golden rectangles on the sides. Great. Luckily, our esteemed morning speaker told us what the golden ratio was. So the golden ratio is 1 plus the square root of 5 over 2. And as you can see from what I just said and this picture, it has the awesome property that it's equal to 1 plus 1 over itself. So that's why when you cut off the square, the remaining bit is in the same proportion. So it's a really wonderful shape. Okay, now the golden L and the double pentagon are friends. In the sense that if you shear and reassemble one, you get the other one. So this is the mind-bending slide. Can you see how you can take the picture on the left and bend it up and get the picture on the right? You can do it in your head? Yeah, great. And you might think, oh, but there's like little bits here on the side that they're sticking out. But you reassemble them via the edge identifications into the empty spots. So they really are the same surface, and the golden L is easier to use because it's made of rectangles, which are easier. So we'll use golden L's. But Diana, you're an expert in the golden L. Ah, but Samuel is an expert in the golden L. So it was a great collaboration. Samuel had written some papers on the golden L, and I had written my thesis on the double pentagon, and so it was very good. So we've been collaborating ever since. Good. So what do we do? So back to the square. Another way you can think about periodic directions on the square, we thought about them as rational slopes, but another way you can think about them is vectors connecting corners of squares. So this is like 7, 2, something like that. But another way to, so we can generalize this to pentagons or golden L's by saying, well, it's a periodic direction connects corners of golden L's as long as they are identified in a good way. So for instance, when you unfold across an edge of a square, you have to put in a slim rectangle. You can't put in a square. You gotta do it right. But otherwise, it's the same idea. And these are the periodic directions on the golden L. It slopes in Q adjoint root 5 also. So my burning question, in case you have forgotten my burning question, is what is the period of a trajectory in a given periodic direction on the pentagon? Still going for it. So we're going to use our same method as before, but now with the golden L. So you could have, before I took the first quadrant and broke it into 2 sectors, and you can think of that as me having put a square in the corner here and just using the vertex to separate them. But now instead I'll put a golden L in there. And so this separates the first quadrant into 4 sectors. Lines with slopes from 0 to 1 over the golden ratio, and then from 1 over the golden ratio to 1, and then from 1 to the golden ratio, and then slopes above the golden ratio. And similarly to before, these are the matrices that transform the whole first quadrant into each of those sectors, chosen so that the determinant is 1. Great. And they take the standard basis vectors to these purple vectors that I've drawn in here. All right, well, let's see what happens. So suppose I start with a periodic direction. I know it's periodic because its slope is in Q adjoint root 5, or it's in the golden L direction. And so I have my 4 matrices, and I do the same thing as before. I'm in the yellow sector, so I do the inverse of the yellow matrix. Now I'm in the blue sector, so I do the inverse of the blue matrix. Now I'm in the green, so I do the inverse of the green. And now I'm on the edge, so I'm in the red, so I do the inverse of the red. And this takes me down to something in this, I made it smaller than 1, 0. So I'll just scale everything up. So I start with 1, 0, and I apply not the inverse this time, but the real matrices to get me to where I was going. To get me to the canonical vector in that direction. And you might be thinking, well, gosh, if you take these matrices and you multiply them out, you're going to get some phi squares. But if you multiply this equation through by phi, you will get phi squared equals phi plus 1. So anytime you have a higher power of phi, you can just bring everything down. So your vector is going to be of the form a plus b phi c plus d. Okay, so this is what we did, and we showed that this tree, the tree of applying all the matrices in all the possible orders that you want, generates all subtle connection vectors on the golden L, and that they all have this form, a plus b phi, comma c plus d. So now we know what all the things are. Okay, but I still have this burning question. What is a period? Well, we couldn't answer that, but we did have some good things going. So here's the tree structure. So if you start with the 1, 0, and you apply your matrices, you get these new vectors, and you apply matrices, you get these new vectors. This picture is not very good. I'd rather have a picture like this. So if you apply these matrices, you get these beautiful trajectories. In fact, in each direction, you get a long one and a short one. These are the short ones that start at the midpoint of an edge. You might notice about this picture that it looks like it's symmetric, like mirror symmetric. And it is. So we showed that the tree is symmetric. And that's basically because the first quadrant is symmetric. So, very beautiful. Lots of things going on. Okay, so just to give you some ideas of the animals in the gallery, if you were to just pluck different leaves off of the tree, here's what they would look like. So if you go 3, 1, 0, 0, 2, that's the one that I was playing with in my example. Here's what you get. So nice. Here's another one. You like this one? So nice. Right? It looks like you're looking into the sun or something. This one especially. So, okay, great. We have pictures, but no theorems. Let's keep going. Okay. So, we had this, but we didn't have a theorem. But we eventually were able to show that the double Pentagon period in this direction is 2 times a plus b plus c plus d. So you just pull off the coefficients of this vector up here, a, b, c, and d, and you double it, which is like the best answer it could possibly have been, right? Because it's like exactly the analogy of p over q, 2 times c plus q, it's 2 times the coefficients. It's great. Like, how did this happen? Like the Pentagon is beautiful, and so beautiful things just seem to happen. And we were very lucky because there is no canonical vector in the direction maybe, but this is a way of making a canonical vector, and it turns out it worked out great. So, great. So you might want, well, I don't know if you want a proof, but I'll just give you a proof because you want proof. So this is a proof by induction. Now, some people have said, if you have a proof by induction, it means you don't really understand what's going on. Have you heard this before? People are judgmental about proofs by induction. No? Well, now you've heard it. Great. Okay. Fine. All right. But in this case, because it's a tree structure, the structure of the whole thing is sort of recursive. And so it makes sense if you have a proof by induction. So here's the deal. So I'm saying that the period is double the sum of the vector coefficients. I'm going to show that it's true for the base case, and then base case, and then I'm going to show that applying a group actions preserves the property, preserves this ratio. So if we start with the base case, horizontal trajectory vector 1, 0, sum of the coefficients is 1. And if you look at the cutting sequence, like, well, we went across green and the yellow, and then yellow back to green. So it's just, we cut across 2 edges here, the yellow and the green. So period is 2. 2 is twice 1. Yes. Okay, so here's the vector part. If we start with the point 1, 0, I'm just doing an example here. Suppose you apply the green matrix. Well, it gets you this new point here. It gives you phi, 1. Great. And if you do the sequence, well, we have a whole list of combinatorial operators that act on sequences and give you new things. And if you run, let's see, so this just means you cut across the green edge and the yellow edge, but I added this extra information. I'm the green edge going to the yellow edge. I'm the yellow edge going to the green edge. And it turns out that's what you need. So if you put 1 going to 2 in here, 1 going to 2, it says, oh, pick 3, 4, 4, 5. Oh, okay, there I am. And then 2 going to 1. What should I do with that? Oh, put 5, 4, 4, 3. Okay, here it is. And so it tells you that you get this. So now you can just look at the bottom. You get black, purple, red, purple. And so that's black, purple, red, purple. So that's the sequence that you get if you apply this green transformation. So let's check. Over here, we got the direction phi1, so sum of coefficients is 2. Over here, we got this thing of period 4, and 4 is twice 2. So this is an example, but if you write it out in variables, it works. So that's the idea. The base case works. Applying the things keeps the ratio the same. So that's the idea. Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. My goal was to understand periodic billiard trajectories on the Pentagon, to explain things for the square and generalize the Pentagon. So we're done. Yay! So for the rest of the time, we get to play with the stuff that we have created, which is really fun. So I call these things buddies, symmetry, and families. So these are things that are different in the Pentagon. These things don't happen for the square. So nobody knew about them before we did our work. So let's press on.
So these are the lengths of the periodic trajectories in the L.
These are the number of times the thing hits the edges in the Pentagon, in the double Pentagon surface. The length of the cutting sequence in the double Pentagon surface. So how many edges it crosses.
So it's not the Euclidean length.
It's not the Euclidean length. It is the number of bounces, which is what I wanted.
But do you count the number? But you don't count the number of times. Which would give you.
I count how many times. I do count the edge in the middle, because the edge in the middle, this black edge here, it counts. It's an edge just like all the other edges. I could have drawn my pentagons anywhere that I wanted, right? I just happened to draw them with the black edge glued together. So all the sides count the same. Yep. So luckily we got something for the Pentagon, not for the golden L, even though we used golden L technology to do it. Yes. If you have the vector in that direction, so if you wanted to know its length, you could just find its length. All right.
Another question.
Okay.
Is there a way to tell whether the vector is the one that you would get? Like in the square, it was just using the lowest terms.
Yeah.
And here, I guess the answer is more complicated, like which multiple of that vector you take.
Yeah. So if you give it a periodic, the vector in a periodic direction. Oh, it's the Euclidean algorithm. That's what I was looking for. You run this Euclidean algorithm on it backwards, and you see if you get to 1, 0. And if you do, then it was the canonical vector in that direction. And if you get to some multiple of 1, 0, then it was that multiple. It's too long, too short by that time. Okay. All right. So, buddies. Everybody needs a buddy, even Pentagon trajectories. So here's the idea. You walk up to a pentagonal billiard table in your favorite pool hall, and you decide that you're going to shoot the ball in this direction. Well, if you're standing there and you shot it in this direction, you get that trajectory. But what if you just moved a little bit to the side? You get that trajectory. What if you moved a little bit to the side? Okay, so this is what happens if you just change, boop. So this is what happens if you change just a little bit your position and keep the direction the same. And eventually you see the top is hitting the corner. Hitting the corner is not allowed in billiards, so forget about this. But after it passes by the corner, we get something else. Can you see that this is longer? There's more lines. There's longer length here. Okay, so here's the deal. In each direction, there's a short trajectory, which I've done in red, and a long trajectory, which I've done in blue. And it's, as you might imagine, the golden ratio times is long. So the nicest example of that, perhaps, is this like parallel to an edge direction. So if you go parallel to an edge here, you get this basically pentagon. And if you go parallel to an edge a little further over, you get this star. So you can think about that as the two examples of the long and the short trajectory in a given direction. This doesn't happen in the square. In the square, if you move it over, you basically always get the same thing. So, for instance, here we've decided to do a parallel to an edge trajectory. This is parallel to this edge. And we're going to move it over. Ooh, it broke into 2. And now it's getting very, very close to hitting the corner. Oh, that's not allowed. But after we go past it, oh, something is different. You see that? Something changed there. It was like a little shorter. We went past the corner. Woo, it's longer. And then as we go closer and closer to the middle, it goes into this star. So nice, right? Yeah. So there's something. So we conjectured. So this is the easiest example to work with. And so because we could play with this example, we conjectured that everything does this. that when you shift a trajectory off of the midpoint, it splits into two, just like this one did. That's false. That is pathologically completely false. I mean, in fact, this is the only one that splits into two. Everything else, if you move it off the midpoint, it just sort of shifts over. Yep, it's okay to be wrong. Great. So I thought I'd show you a gallery of these parallel trajectories because I think they're quite beautiful. So this is what the pictures are going to be showing. On the left, the short trajectory in a given direction. On the right, the long trajectory in a given direction, always coming from the midpoint of an edge. And then on the top, superimposed together. You see what's going to happen? Let's do it. Oh, so nice. So one thing you can see is that where one trajectory has like busy spots, the other one has like less busy spots. And so when you put them together, you kind of fill in more uniformly. So nice, right? You can see that they're parallel up here because they have these parallel bits. This one, oh, so nice. This one, I mean, if you know, Notre Dame needs new rose windows. Okay, so let's talk about symmetry. One thing that you might have noticed in the previous ones is that some of the paths have rotational symmetry and some of them don't. So let's talk about it. So there's two types of trajectories. Those with only reflection symmetry, like this one. And then there's ones with rotation symmetry, like this one. Okay, so how do these arise? Here's a trajectory of period 4 on the double pentagon. So this is a surface. I've just drawn a new pentagon for each time the trajectory crosses an edge. So it started here, it went over to there, and then look, this edge is parallel to this edge, and this little distance is the same, so it repeats. Okay, so this is period 4. And now I'm going to reverse unfold. I'm going to fold it up. So I'm going to take this last pentagon, fold it over, fold it over, fold it over. And now the trajectory over here returned to where it started. It's like closed up. So that means that the double pentagon period over here, which was 4, is the same as the billiard period over here. You might think this looks like it has period 2, but it's going choo 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 choo. Right? It's period 1. Okay, great. Okay. But here, let's see this. So this is a periodic trajectory of period 2 on the double pentagon, because this length is the same as this length. When you fold it up, it's not done. You gotta keep going. So you have to do 5 copies of that thing to be done. And so it has period 2 on the double pentagon, but you have to do it 5 times over here, so it's period 10 over here on the pentagon. So in that case, you have to take the double pentagon period and multiply it by 5 to get the billiard period. So just in case you think there's some kind of numerology going on with 4, here's an example of a period 4 on the double pentagon. When you fold it up, you get this thing, which you have to multiply by 5 to get this one. Nice. That's the one that I have on my necklace. And then here's one with period 6, that when you fold it up, you get this nice periodic trajectory with only reflection symmetry. So it works. So in this case, the double pentagon period and the billiard period are the same. So it turns out that I lied to you a little bit before. Sorry about that, but you weren't ready. So the pentagon billiard period, so given a periodic direction whose canonical vector is this, a plus bp, c plus dp, the pentagon billiard period is just 2 times the vector coefficients if the trajectory has only reflection symmetry. And you have to multiply it by 5 if it has rotation symmetry also. Get back where you started. So that finishes answering my burning question. Except that you might ask, like, how do you know if it has reflection or rotation symmetry? You can do that, but it's not as much fun, so we won't do it today. Come to the flat surfaces version of the talk for that. Okay, just kidding. Okay, so here's some paths. I'm biased toward paths with rotation symmetry because I think they are the most beautiful. But for those of you who like the ones with only reflective, I'm guessing that a lot of you like the ones with only reflective symmetry. Okay, let's do a show of hands. How many of you like the ones with rotation symmetry? All the symmetries, great. How many of you like the ones with only reflection symmetry? Yeah. So my that was not me. That was roughly 2/3 of view for rotation and 1/3 of view for only reflection. And my observation has been that it's sort of a Rorschach test, and that the cool people always like the only reflection of the tree. So here's a gallery of paths, only reflections in the tree. I nudged this one off the midpoint, so it doesn't even have reflections in the tree anymore. Here's some. This one nice. That was nice, right? That was really nice. I think we can all agree that. Yeah. Pretty nice. But it is like a Rorschach test, so you can pick your favorite, and then we can judge you for it. Like, what if this one was your favorite? So this one, when I saw this one, you know what I thought? I thought, that would make a great earring. This one was born to be an earring. I still haven't made it into an earring, but I made other things into earrings. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is families. You can have a birth family, a chosen family, and you can also have a family of related trajectories, should you choose to be a family. So, I'll remind you that we had this, that we constructed a tree of periodic Pentagon directions, starting with 1, 0, and then applying these various transformations in any order we wanted. And that gave us a tree. Here was the tree. So it's basically a 4, from every node of the tree, 4 things go out. So it's a very, 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 very bushy tree. Here again are the pictures. Okay, so I wish that I could just make like a really awesome poster. You know how you have like a genealogical PhD poster, but like that tree, everyone should have one advisor in some sense. So that shouldn't even really be a tree. It should just be like a root. But that turns out to be a bushy tree. This one is a super bushy tree. I can't make this into a poster because from every node, there's 4 things coming out. So, but we can look a little bit. So from this one, you get, for example, you get these nice things. Have you ever seen this? This one, like, it isn't that beautiful, but look how beautiful its children are. Okay. Okay, so we can explore the tree and see all the good things that happen in it. Okay, so in case you weren't paying attention, which seems like most of you are paying attention, but in case you weren't paying attention, this is where you can come back in because I'm just going to talk about jewelry. So, so I thought these are really beautiful. Not all of them, but a lot of them are really beautiful. And so I decided to make them into jewelry, like this one that I have on. Who's wearing jewelry? Yeah, that's like 5 people. That's pretty good. And plus me. So I decided to make them into jewelry. But there's, as you may have noticed, even though I didn't say it, there are countably infinitely many trajectories. So I wasn't going to make that many. Be like, hey, which one do you want? Because that would be a lot of work. So I wanted to figure out which trajectories people thought were most beautiful. So I made this website where I just dumped the first 4 levels of the tree onto the website. And I sent it to people. And I said, please tell me which one you like and I'll make it into jewelry. And I was thinking like, I will just figure out what the most popular ones are and then I'll make those into jewelry. Okay, so I have a real question for you. Look at this and decide which one is your favorite and keep it in your head. Okay, do it. You have a favorite? Okay. Raise your hand if this one is your favorite. You guys are a tough, y'all are a tough audience. So it turns out that something like 50% of people, for 50% of people, this is their favorite. And a lot of you like the asymmetrical ones, so I can see why this didn't work as well as usual. One of them is a clear favorite. I always tell the story, and the 2 people who are in this story are in the audience, and the story is going to be really great today. So this is the one. So often when I do this, half of the room picks the same one. Okay. So this is the one that people pick when I have it printed out in jewelry, like in wood. And this is the one that people pick on the screen. So for example, I showed the library to Elena, and I said, you can pick your favorite 4. And she picked 4, and 2 of them were this one. Which is not really your fault because everything appears twice on the table because of the symmetry of the tree, which I hadn't realized when I made the thing. But like still, right? This is a beautiful trajectory. And I showed the same library to Dylan, and I said, Dylan, pick your favorite. And Dylan picked this one. And that was also my favorite. And so after that, after my visit to Michigan, I thought, you know, there's something about this trajectory that is like special. And I just had this burning question, like, what is it about this trajectory? And I also noticed that, you know, people like this one, which is pretty similar to this one, and like, are there more? So I thought that these things would make nice coordinating sets, that these would look good for like low earrings. And then I could make this for like a pendant, would be pretty great. And then as my technology got better, I was able to make things that were more intricate. So maybe actually I could make these for the earrings, and I could make a more intricate one for the pendant. But I still couldn't figure out the pattern, like where do these come from? But then I noticed the pattern of the tree location. That's what I put here, is the tree location where these things. Did you notice the pattern? Yeah, it took me like 6 months. But it turns out that if you just add the zeros in the middle, you get more of these. So I wondered about that. In the middle of wondering about that, I went to visit Barak Weiss at Tel Aviv University for some other project not related to this project. But I had a stack of these Pentagons that I had printed out. I had laser cut them, and I also had the library, and I showed it to Barak. And so he had lots of questions about it, not about the questions that I had come to ask him. So he had this great idea, twist it over and over. So I'm going to explain that. So here's the thing. So we start with the trajectory on the double pentagon surface. This is a periodic trajectory, as before. So it just goes here, and then it goes there, and then it goes there. And we're going to give every pentagon, every bit of trajectory its own pentagon, because that's nice. So remember that if we start with a billiard trajectory on the double pentagon like this, to get a billiard, if we start with a trajectory on the surface, to get a billiard, we have to fold it up. So we fold it like this. And then, usually, we have to have 5 copies of it to get the whole trajectory. You remember? Great. Okay, so here was Barak's idea. Barak said, what if you start with a trajectory like this, and you twist it over and over? So what I mean by twist is like, if it was on, it's a genus 2 surface, but just imagine it's a genus 1 surface, and I have a trajectory drawn on it. And then I take it like if it's a bagel or something, and I break it apart, and I twist it, and I put it back together. So that's what's going to happen. It's a horizontal shear, but you can think of it as just taking a trajectory and twisting it over and over and over. You can imagine that it would get like more and more lines wrapping around. So that's what's going to happen. Ready? Here we go. So I've also put the tree location here, so you can see what's going on. 1, 2. So horizontal shear is just 0. So we get it more and more and more twisty. Okay, that's good. You can see what would happen. Now let's see what are the associated billiard trajectories. So we're going to take each one, give it its own pentagon, fold it up. Boom. Okay, let's do it. Ready? Here, and I put also the tree location here. Right? There's a 20-second one. I'll just fast forward a little bit. So cool, right? Yeah. Okay. So one thing you can get from this, by the way, is if you have a favorite number that's a multiple of 10 and you want a periodic billiard trajectory with that period, you can do it with this construction. Okay, so what I call the beautiful family is made with exactly the same kind of construction. So you remember maybe that after 6 months, I noticed that you could add the zeros in the middle, and you can see this happening. Are you ready? Are you ready for this one? Okay. Right? Okay, so that's the one that I have on the front of my shirt. Oh, so nice. Okay, so one thing we that Barack had asked from looking at the library. If you look at this, you can see that at the beginning, you can see a lot of nice trajectories, but as you go to the bottom, they just are black. And if you scroll down, like even more of them are black. That's because they're very long and pixels are big. If you zoomed in, of course, it would take longer for it to become black, but you might wonder, as Barack did, maybe it's the case that as the length of the path increases, periodic biliary trajectories equidistribute in the Pentagon. What do you think? No? No, why not? Because of my shirt. Exactly. If you're sitting in the back, you'll notice that the middle is more dense than this annulus type thing around the outside. So this is a counterexample. They definitely, whatever equidistribute means with things of finite length, they don't. This is an example of things that don't equidistribute. Yeah. Sunrose is wearing a shirt with another Pentagon trajectory that basically does equidistribute. Yeah. Great. Great. So, but we did show it is the case that the trajectories equidistribute in cylinders on the double Pentagon. So we've been talking about billiard trajectories on the Pentagon where they don't equidistribute, but check this out. Okay, so here's what I mean by equidistribute in cylinders on the double Pentagon. So here's a trajectory, and now I'm going to twist it, not in the horizontal direction, but now in like that direction. Ready? Let's twist. So we're twisting, twisting, twisting. So cylinders are like the strips that you get. It means that it equidistributes in each strip, but not on the whole surface. So that's what's going on. It's filling in these strips. Now this is a double Pentagon trajectory, and if you want to turn this into a billiard trajectory, you can just sort of what I call stamp it around. I invented this too. So you take just one of those, just one, because they're the same. Here's this orientation. Now I'm going to put one on in this orientation. Also that one, and that one. And that's how you get the billiard picture. So it's not equidistributed, but it is definitely beautiful. Yes, 50% of people agree. Like 20% of you people. So recall, okay, so here's something really interesting. So regular polygons, as I said at the very beginning, regular polygons exhibit optimal dynamics. So if you shoot your billiard ball in some direction, you know it's either going to be periodic like this, or equidistributed like this. You know, what some people call interesting. It was Moon, another career mathematician, who explained this to me. So back when I was a grad student, I applied for a job at Tufts, and I was like, "Dear Moon, please give me the job that you have advertised." And Moon was like, "Well, we can't do that, but could you give a talk?" So I came to Tufts. I met Harry for the first time. Good at this talk. And Moon spent like 6 hours with me, explaining to me awesome things about surfaces and such. So as a grad student who only hung out with regular polygons, I was like, of course, everything should have optimal dynamics. Like, how could you have something else? And Moon showed me this example of Kermit Mullins, which Kurt has a graduate student in the audience, right? Right, good, okay. So this is an example where you take a square, and then you glue an irrational rectangle onto the edge to make this what's called an L-shaped table. And then it's chosen such that if you hit your trajectory at 45 degrees, it will bounce around forever. It will fill in this whole part, this part twice as much as that part, and these corners not at all. So this is not optimal dynamics because it fills in something densely and some other part not at all. So you might wonder, can this happen on the regular Pentagon? Could you have a trajectory that fills in everything densely and misses a corner? Well, no, because Pentagons exhibit optimal dynamics. But almost. So, kind of yes. Sort of cheating, but kind of yes. So check this out. So here's the family, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pad with 3. So I'm just going to turn this 3 into a whole bunch of 3s. Are you ready? Yes. Here we go. Oh, so pretty. It's so pretty. And the ball's never going into that corner.
This is a great earring.
It's a great earring. And you know what else it is? It's a great shirt. I was wondering, so for example, if you twisted this, as long as you wanted, you would get all of your trajectory in this big cylinder and none of it in this thin cylinder. So you could, question?
If you add more threes, do you get closer to that corner, or is there like a limit that you just can't pass?
Yeah, you get closer to the corner.
Okay.
But there's some place here that you never cross. It's like, like 1/n gets close to 0, but it never touches it. Like it'll get closer and closer and closer, but it won't get it's like 1 + 1/n. It's closer and closer to 0.
Right. Okay.
But doesn't get there. Yeah. Yep. So this is equidistributing in cylinders. This one has 100% of the trajectory, and this one has 0% of the trajectory. So you might wonder, what kind of ratios can you get? So Kurt was thinking about this as like the failure of optimal dynamics. What kind of failures can you get? You can certainly get 50-50 if the thing is equidistributed in the whole thing. You can get 100 and 0 in this picture. But what kind of things can you get? What is the structure of the set of possible proportions? And because he works really fast, this is a theorem I haven't understood yet. It is homeomorphic to the set of omega to the omega plus 1, which is like you have accumulation points, and you have accumulation points, and accumulation points, and accumulation points, and those accumulation points, and so on. So it's a little, we thought it might be like a Cantor set, but it turns out it's a bit more complicated. Great, so this is me and Kurt sailing. I took him sailing, and I was like, oh, so you're so busy, you're department chair, you have 4 graduate students, you got a lot going on, what are you working on? I thought he was gonna say, I don't know, recruiting graduate students or something. He said, oh no, I'm working on that stuff that you talked about in Grenoble, Diana. Oh, okay, so then he, we were sitting there and he told me about this result right there. This after we flipped the boat over. So what I want to know is like, how does this happen? This empty bit here. So is there a similar method to stamping around that works for asymmetrical trajectories? So remember, if I had a trajectory on the surface, I could just sort of stamp it around 5 times and get a billiard trajectory. The same thing doesn't work for this. So this is a picture of the trajectory in a special direction on the double pentagon, and this is the trajectory in the same direction on the billiard table. So on the billiard table, this corner is empty. But maybe you can see this is not white, it's gray. So it's not empty over here. And I don't understand how that works. And I think this is where our use of the double pentagon instead of the actual translation terms associated breaks down. But we're gonna have to go back to the necklace to make life better, make life make sense. So other things, so I want to understand that mechanism from surface trajectories to asymmetrical billiard paths. And then like understand billiard trajectory behavior. So we have this whole library with all these beautiful pictures. So there are lots of questions you could ask about these beautiful pictures. Like, does every even number arise as a billiard period? I mean, you get 4, 6, 8, and 10. That's a good start. But it turns out, well, we calculated up to 4,000, which is as far as we've cared to go, and we got everything except 2, 12, 14, and 18. So basically, if you have a favorite number that's even, I can get you a custom billiard trajectory with that period, as long as it's not 2, 12, 14, 18. That's good. And then you would want to know what is the growth rate. So for each billiard trajectory that arises, each even number, except for those 4, how many of there of each, and how does it go? And then, like, there's lots of questions about these pictures. Basically, when people look at the library, they ask me, why are there holes? Like, what's the deal with that earring hole there? What's the deal with these funny little weird Pentagon house-shaped, I don't know, keyhole-shaped holes there? I don't know. Here are some even nicer holes, maybe. Here's a nice hole in each corner. Here's a nice oval hole, making a flower shape. Here are some nice ones. I really like these. Like these? I like it. The half of the room that likes symmetric things is gonna agree with me. It's nice. So anyway, and then to understand the distribution of lattice vectors. So here on the left is a picture of just all the visible points if you have an orchard with a tree at every lattice point in the regular lattice, the normal square lattice. And here's the picture for the golden elm. So it's different. So we want to understand it.
What are the colors?
The colors are how late it occurs in the tree. So, yeah, that's how late it arises in the tree. So the dark blue is early in the tree and the red is late in the tree. And then over spring break, I was working on, are there large empty patches? Like, see, there's some little empty patches here. How big can the empty patches get? Are there dense areas? This looks kind of dense. I don't know, that looks kind of dense, whatever. And then some people ask us all sorts of questions. How do vector lengths distribute much? I don't know. Tons of things you can ask.
So how does this change if you do it hyperbolic?
Well, you may remember at the beginning, I said like humans only understand square, equilateral triangle, regular hexagon, and now the pentagon. Like life is hard enough in the Euclidean plane. I don't know, maybe it's easier in the hyperbolic plane. I don't know, does anyone know? But if it's harder, then I would guess that people haven't done it. Does anyone know? You know? Okay, some people. Do you know people who do it?
Yeah, but I'm thinking about it.
Someone working on it?
Well, I know people who think about trajectories and hyperbolic plane. And Alex gave a talk on it earlier this year. But, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying, like, I've like looked at things that are sort of tangent to that. It looks like the paths wind up ergodic almost always.
Same here.
And I was going to ask, like, is there some kind of qualitative difference between things that tessellate and things that don't? And if there is that, then what happens when we go to hyperbolic plane where basically everything is tessellate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Certainly, things that tessellate by reflection are easy to study because you can tile plane with them and then study lines in a grid instead of having to do other things. Things with rational angles are easier because we know what happens with them. There are like counterplane and filling many periodic directions, but other things like a random table that you choose, it would be very hard to study. Question?
Also, I was going to ask about people know about the spheres too.
Spherical polygons?
What?
Spherical polygons? Polygons on the sphere?
Yeah, like just under the heat.
Oh, yes. Yes, you would study just the flow on the dodecahedron, right? It wouldn't bounce, right? It would just go through the edges. Yes. I did a paper doing the tetrahedron and the cube, and then recently people have worked on the dodecahedron, so that's Jayadeva, Threya, John Chaika?
No, but I know the paper, I'm trying to remember, who else was on.
Oh, yeah.
I can find it later.
Yeah. So they recently did the dodecahedron using Sage to do some calculations.
David Olasino.
Yes, David Olasino and Jayadeva Threya. I'm not sure. Maybe. Okay. Question?
The presence of the golden ratio here, is that an artifact of pentagonalness?
Yes.
Do you expect that to show up?
Yes. So if you have a regular pentagon, great question, which I forgot to say. Thanks. If you have a regular pentagon, the ratio of the diagonal to the edge is the golden ratio to 1. So that's where it comes out.
So as the length of the trajectory goes to infinity, they're not necessarily becoming distributed, but it's the probability that it's equidistributed among the width and wings.
Yes.
Getting better and better.
Yes. Basically, all of them become equidistributed as the path gets very long. The only way to not have it happen is to do this very special thing where you start with a trajectory and then you twist either in the horizontal or vertical direction lots and lots of times.
If you do the silver L, does it mean you do a regular pentagon? If you do the silver L,
What's the silver L?
instead of the 1 1 1 1 continuous fraction, you do the 2 2 2 2.
Square root of 2? Is that what it is?
Square root of 2 minus 1.
Square root of 2 minus 1. I'm not sure. Is that associated to the octagon, maybe? Regular octagon? I'm not sure. Good question.
Yes,
Is what is the question?
it should be associated with octagon, yes.
Yeah, it should be associated. So the associated L should be associated to the regular octagon, and nobody has done it yet. But there's a lot of work on the octagon surface, so I think it could be done.
So you could do basically you're doing a Euclidean algorithm backwards in some
Yes, exactly.
And so if you're working in some number field, like here's Q adjoin 5,
Square
or
root 5.
adjoin something else.
Yeah.
As long as you run your algorithm, you can do this construction, but then it's not clear what polygon you're really working.
That's right. In that case, it's the regular octagon. And I should say, after I made all these pictures, so I think that periodic things are interesting. I made all these pictures, I gave this talk. After I started giving this talk, John Smiley, he and Karina Utsugai are the ones who studied the regular octagon surface in great detail. And he said, oh yeah, when we were doing that work, I made pictures of the billiards on it, and they looked pretty much like yours, but I didn't think it was interesting, so I didn't pursue it. So yeah, about basically the same thing happens. Talk to John. Apparently, yeah.
Your cool pictures look like a ribbon or something like this is wrapped around Pentagon.
Yes.
Is there like understanding width of this based on your tree length or something?
Yeah, the width is based on the cylinder that it lives in. So basically, we know when I was saying you pick the direction you're going to hit your ball in, but you have to decide where you're going to stand to hit it. Like the wiggle room you have, that depends, that is the width of your cylinder. You could calculate that. And before I ask you to clap again,
We don't have any once.
okay, before you clap for the first time, I want to say that I have earrings. I did make earrings out of them, and so you're welcome to take them. It takes me a little time, so you can give me money for them, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. And they're great. You can have your billiard trajectories on your ears if you like.
All right, let's thank Diana.
Let's start at
So okay, if you put like a hyperbolic geometry in the Pentagon instead,
Yes.
is studying this billiard flow the same as studying a linear flow?